Hello everyone, I cordially welcome you all to another video from the React tutorial series, and in this video we are going to discuss about function components in React. So what are function components? Function components in React are simple JavaScript TypeScript functions which are used to render UI on the web browser. Each component in React is basically a tiny reusable component of a web page. So when I say this, what I basically mean, unlike class components, functional components are written not in that object-oriented programming paradigm. Functional components are basically simple JavaScript functions which basically return an HTML-like code which is known as JSX, and that gets rendered on the browser. Okay, and the benefit of using components as a whole, what I have already mentioned, is basically you can reuse those components. Okay, now there are some important facts which I believe a developer must know about function components. The first point is, previously functional components were called stateless component as there was no state involved. If you have read about class components in our blog or you have watched the previous video, you know that class components are known as stateful components. The reason is they can have their own state. But unlike class components, functional components don't have any state, so they were called stateless component. But with the introduction of React hooks in 2019, with React version 16.8, allowed us to use states without using class components. So as I said, in 2019, with the introduction of React version 16.8, hooks were introduced in the React development world, and using those hooks, we could use state in function components. Besides providing the option to use state in function components, hooks in React provides us the benefits of class components without actually using a class component. Okay, hooks are the functions which hook into React state and lifecycle features from function components. And remember, these hooks don't work in class components. The reason is the class components have their own methods in place to handle the lifecycle features. Point which I am about to make here in this slide is basically, in the initial phase of functional components they were stateless, but with the introduction of hooks in React, within React version 16.8, a lot of new features were introduced in function components using a concept known as hooks. And these hooks actually not only added state to our functional components, but it also imbibed a lot of beneficial features from class components into our function components. Okay, now let's see an example how we can write function components. So here we have come to our code. So if you can see my screen, you will see basically the previous code which we have written in the previous video. So I will erase this and write our new function component. So majorly there are two ways by which you can write a function component. I will discuss both of them. The first one is using a general function keyword. So function app. Now this app will be like a function, and this function will have a return keyword. Within this return keyword, we can write our HTML-like code, which I told is known as JSX code. So here I will create a div element with the name of container fluid, and within this div element I will write welcome to tutorials in hand. So we have done the first implementation of functional components. So let's run our code and see if it's working. So we write npm start so that our browser opens up and shows us the output on the browser. So yes, our browser has opened up and it's loading, and as you can see, we can see welcome to tutorials in hand as we wanted. Now I will show you another way by which we can do the same thing. This thing will happen using a concept known as arrow function. So if you are from JavaScript background, you already know what are arrow functions. If you are not, so this is out of the scope of this video. But just in short, I will tell that in arrow functions what happened, we assign a function to a variable and we write those functions using fat arrows. So let's see how we do it. First of all, I will import FC from React. Now, FC stands for functional components. And what I will do, const app which will be of type fc equal to this, and here I will write the fat arrow. This is what it is. And see, our code has successfully compiled, and if we go to our browser, so it is working absolutely fine. So the first method what you saw was using general function keyword, and the second method which you now saw is using arrow functions. Okay. Now there are few more things which I would like to discuss about functional components. So let's go back to our slide. So what are the benefits of function components? The first benefit is increased readability. As already discussed, functional components are simple JavaScript, TypeScript functions. Thus, for any regular JavaScript developer, it is very easy to read and understand. So when you learn any programming language, you learn about functions, right? And this is a very primitive feature of any programming language. So if you understand functions in JavaScript, it is very easy for you to understand functional components. Easier to test. In functional components, it is easier to test the application as there is no hidden state manipulation involved due to any side effects. Due to this, for same input, the code will produce the exact same output. Better performance. Due to no overload generated by the lifecycle methods in React function component, there remains no requirement for extra memory allocation or checks for update. Easier to debug. Functional components are very easy to debug as they heavily rely on the props from the parent component and less on state. Therefore, if the props are known, due to less overload, the output is predictable and thus issues are easier to resolve. So the outcome of this slide is basically we have discussed about the benefits of functional components. So in the first point, we have discussed that functional components are more readable than their class component counterpart. They are easier to test as there are no side effects involved. And when I talk about side effects, I mean about API calls, timers and all those things which happen in our code. Functional component directly we don't have any side effects, but if we want to make some, we can configure it like that way. Functional components are better performant because they do not have like pre-built lifecycle methods. If we want to implement the same, we can use them using hooks, and they are easier to debug. As I said that they are dependent on props. So if you are not sure what are props, so we will discuss about them in our upcoming videos. But just for now, remember, parent components can pass some data or function to their child components. Those data are basically known as props. Okay. And with the benefits which function component provides, there are some minor disadvantages as well. The first disadvantage is the learning curve. Writing JavaScript function with props and then return a JSX code is a bit tricky at first. If you have been working in React using class and object-oriented concepts, you will find the syntax for function component a little odd. So why is it so? Because as we have seen in the code which I have shared, function components accept props and they return an HTML-like code which I have already told is known as JSX. So that thing is a little bit tricky if you are not familiar with the JavaScript environment. In the class components, you have seen that there is a render method. So even in function component, there is no render method involved. You directly return an HTML-like code. Okay. And also in function components, there are no lifecycle methods. You use them using hooks. So this is one of the point which can be a little bit tricky at first if you are switching from a non-React or non-JavaScript background to directly function components. The second point is optimization. Previously, due to absence of lifecycle methods or state methods in function component, it was difficult to optimize the React application written using functional component. But with the advent of React hooks and methods like memo, use callback, etc., it is easier to optimize the functional components. So basically previously what used to happen is in class component there were two concepts. One is a react.component and another one was react.pure component. So this pure component we will discuss in one of our upcoming videos. This pure component was a bit of more performance efficient than their components counterpart, and why that we will discuss later. Okay, but similarly there was no concept of pure component in functional components. But with the advent of React hooks in version 16.8, these hooks like use callback and use memo and react.memo enabled us to write more performance efficient React code. So this is all for now. I hope you like this video. If you like this video, please feel free to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. And if you want to show us some support, you can share the videos with your friends and family whom you think might be benefited out of this video. If you have any doubts, queries or suggestions, feedbacks, you can feel free to post them in the comment section. We are going to reply. So thank you for now. See you in the next video. Bye.